Little Thumb. Once upon a time, there lived a woodcutter and his wife. They had 7 children. They were very poor, and it was hard for them to look after their children. They had a child called Little Thumb, who was the youngest in their family. He was always ill, and his size was no bigger than one's thumb. Once there was a bad famine, and the woodcutter's family found it difficult to feed his family. One night he decided that he would leave his children in a forest, and they would somehow look after themselves. Little Thumb heard what his parents had talked about. His father gave each of his children a piece of bread for breakfast. Little Thumb had an idea. He thought of throwing small bits of bread along the way, so he put his bread bits in his pocket. The family went into the forest, and the woodcutter began his work. The children also helped him. When the parents saw that their children were busy, they quietly went away unseen. They were unhappy at what they had done to their children. When the children came to know that their parents had left them in the thick forest, they began to cry. But Little Thumb did not cry. He knew that he could find a way back with the help of the bits of bread he had thrown along the way. But something bad happened. The birds had eaten every bit of bread. Now all the children were afraid. But Little Thumb had great ideas. He climbed to the top of a tall tree to see if he could find anything. There he saw a light shining a little far away. He walked with his brothers towards the light. They arrived at a big house. A large woman opened the door and asked them what they wanted. Little Thumb told them his story and requested her to give him a place to stay. The woman began to cry and told them that the house belonged to a cruel giant who eats up little children. But they asked her again, and she let them come in. She hoped that she could hide them from the giant until the morning. When the children were sitting near the fire, they heard the giant coming. The woman quickly hid the children under the bed. She opened the door and let the giant in. The giant sat down on the chair and asked for food. He smelled the air and told his wife, "I smell fresh meat." He got up from the table and ran towards the bed. He pulled out the children from the bed one by one. poor children fell to the ground and cried. But they did not know that they were in a house of one of the cruelest giants in the world. He picked up a sharp knife and came near the children to cut them up. Suddenly, his wife told him, "You are tired now. Can you eat them in the morning?" The giant agreed with her and told her, "Give them enough food and make them sleep." The good woman was happy now, and she gave food to the children. But the children were afraid, and they could not eat anything. The giant, in the meantime, had too much to drink and fell asleep. When Little Thumb saw that the giant was fast asleep, he and his brothers escaped out of the house. They ran all night and did not know where they were going. When the giant came to know that the children had escaped, he became very angry and told his wife to bring them his 7-league boots at once. Wearing those boots, he went out to search for the children. He stepped from one mountain to the other. He crossed over rivers as easily as if they were streams. At last, he found the road where the children were resting. Little Thumb hid behind a rock. He kept a watch over the giant. The giant was very tired due to the long trip, and so he decided to take rest. He soon fell asleep. Little Thumb put on the magical boots of the giant and went back to the giant's wife. He told her that the giant was in great danger, as he had been captured by a gang of thieves. He also added that they would kill the giant if he did not give them all his money. Little Thumb showed the giant's wife the 7-league boots. This convinced her that her husband was indeed in great trouble. The woman gave Little Thumb all the giant's money. Little Thumb returned with the money and his brothers to his father's house. He was received with great joy there. The giant was ashamed of being tricked by that incident. The people never heard from him again.
Children, this is the story of Goldilocks and the 3 bears. Once, there was a bear's family who lived in a cottage in a jungle. There was a papa bear, a mama bear, and a little baby bear. One morning, Mama Bear prepared some porridge for their breakfast. The porridge was very hot and the three bears decided to take a walk in the forest while it cooled. They had not gone long when a little girl named Goldilocks came along. She had flowers in her hands. When she saw the three bears' cottage, she happily clapped her hands. She found it pretty and was curious to know who lived there. She stood on her toes and peeped inside through a window. She found nobody inside. She opened the door and went inside the cottage. She saw 3 bowls of porridge on the table. She cried with joy. "Oh, that porridge smells good! She was feeling hungry. So she picked up a spoon to taste the porridge in the big bowl. She cried, "Ouch! That porridge is too hot to eat!" After that, she tasted the porridge in the medium-sized bowl, but that porridge was too cold to eat. At last, she tasted the porridge in the tiny little bowl. This porridge was just right for her to eat, and she ate it all up. Then she found 3 chairs set before the fire and decided to sit there. First, she sat on the big-sized chair. She said, "Oh, that chair is too hard to sit." After that, she sat on the medium-sized chair. She said, "Oh no, that chair is too soft to sit." At last, she sat on the tiny little chair. She said with a smile, "Wow! This chair is just right." At that same moment, the little chair broke. Goldilocks stood up and dusted herself. Then she went towards the bedroom. There she saw 3 beds. "Oh, I am feeling sleepy." She pulled down the covers and climbed into the big-sized bed to sleep. But she immediately jumped down. She said, "That bed is too hard to sleep." She climbed into the medium-sized bed to sleep, but she found it too soft to sleep. At last, she climbed into the tiny little bed. She found it just right. She was soon fast asleep. After some time, the bear's family came back. They were very hungry and decided to eat the porridge. Suddenly, Papa Bear cried out, "Someone has eaten my porridge!" Mama Bear cried out, "Someone has eaten my porridge!" Baby Bear cried out, "Someone has eaten my porridge and it is all finished!" Then they saw their chairs. Papa Bear said, "Someone sat on my chair!" Mama Bear said, "Someone sat on my chair." Then Baby Bear said, "Someone sat on my chair and it is broken!" Then they went towards their bedroom. Papa Bear shouted, "Someone slept on my bed!" Mama Bear shouted, "Someone slept on my bed!" Then Baby Bear said, "Someone is sleeping in my bed, and here she is!" Goldilocks immediately woke up. And seeing the three bears, she jumped out of the bed and ran out of the door as fast as she could. She didn't stop at all till she reached her home. The three bears never saw Goldilocks again. Red Riding Hood. A little girl named Red Riding Hood lived with her mother in a cottage at the edge of a forest. Her father was a woodcutter. She always wore a red hooded coat that her grandma made for her. That is why she was called Red Riding Hood. Her grandmother lived alone in a rose-covered cottage at the other edge of the forest. Red Riding Hood loved her grandmother very much and liked to visit her as often as possible. One day her mother said to her, "Why don't you go to your grandmother's house for tea today? She has not been well. I have baked a cake and prepared some fruit juice for her." She put the food in a basket and gave it to Red Riding Hood. She told her not to stray away from the path which led to her grandmother's cottage. She also instructed her not to stop to talk to anyone on the way, especially strangers. Red Riding Hood nodded her head and promised her mother that she would go straight to her grandmother's cottage. Then her mother waved goodbye to her. The little girl merrily went on her way. After some time, she met a wolf. The wolf was wicked and mean and very hungry. The wolf sweetly asked her where she was going. Little Red Riding Hood replied that she was going to visit her grandmother. She also told the wolf about the food she was taking to her. The wolf asked her where her grandmother lived. Little Red Riding Hood told the wolf where the cottage was and even told him how to reach it. The wicked wolf then told the little girl to collect flowers for her grandmother. Red Riding Hood began to collect flowers, and the wolf went away. The wolf went towards Red Riding Hood's grandmother's cottage. He said to himself, "Aha! I will eat the old grandmother now, and little Red Riding Hood at lunch." Reaching the cottage, the wolf knocked at the door. The grandmother was an old lady. She could not come to the door. She told the wolf to lift the door latch and come in. Thus, the wolf entered the cottage. Quickly, he jumped on the old lady and ate her up. Gulp! Oh! Now, the wolf shut the door, wore the grandmother's clothes, and lay down on her bed. It hid itself under the bed sheet and waited for Red Riding Hood. After a while, Red Riding Hood knocked at the door. In a voice which sounded just like the grandmother, the wolf told her to lift the latch and come in. She did. Little Red Riding Hood said, "My mother has sent some cake and fruit juice for you, but your voice seems strange. Why are you in bed?" The wolf said, "I am not feeling very well. Come, child, and sit on the bed." Red Riding Hood came near and was surprised to see the way her grandmother looked. She said, "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have!" The wolf replied, "It is so that I can see you better." Red Riding Hood then said, What big ears you have!" The wolf replied, "It is so that I can hear you better." Red Riding Hood said, What big teeth you have!" The wolf replied, "It is so that I can eat you up." The wolf jumped out of the bed and rushed towards Red Riding Hood to eat her. Oh my God! Little Red Riding Hood ran screaming to the door of the cottage. As soon as the wolf got her red dress, the cottage door opened and her father came rushing in. He killed the wolf with his axe. Then he held Red Riding Hood in his arms. She told him, "Oh, father, I think the wolf has eaten up dear grandmother." Her father quickly cut the wolf open with a knife and found the old lady inside the wolf's body. As the wolf was greedy, he had just swallowed the grandmother. He had not chewed her. Because of this, she was safe and sound inside the wolf's body. The three of them sat down to enjoy the food that Little Red Riding Hood's mother had packed. Now Red Riding Hood promised them, "I will never talk to any stranger again. I will always obey my mother and never stray away from the path."
Click on the bell icon to get regular updates from Venus.
For more entertainment, log on and subscribe to www.youtube.com/VenusKidsWorld.